podcast. In our last episode, we briefly discussed character creation, but we decided we had more to say on the topic, so here comes round 2. I'm Kristin, and today I'm happy to be sitting down with Jason, Lee, and Joe again to continue the conversation. Hello, friends.
Hi.
Hello.
Who's ready to pick up where we left off?
Me.
Little bit.
Me. A little bit? Oh,
Little bit.
all right. You have like 30 seconds to get that enthusiasm up, buddy. All right. So we're going to start with probably my favorite part of character creation, the backstory. Anybody who has ever had me as a player knows that I tend to go pretty in-depth with mine. Several pages later, I don't think that's the usual. So I would love to know how you all approach your backstories.
Cool.
I was going to say, Joe,
let's
you
do it.
look like you're raring to go.
I'll go because mine is easy. I start by not starting.
But when you do start...
No, I really struggle with, and I had this when we're setting up for our latest campaign. I really struggle with, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. So I have ideas in my head, and then I can't work out how to get them into the game because I worry that first of all, is that going to be realistic for the setting we're in? Second of all, is the DM going to be okay with that? Third of all, would I have interacted with any other characters? And if I had, I don't want to put the words in their mouths. And I have all these constant concerns about setting up the backstory that essentially holds me back and makes me not want to start it. And I know the typical advice is, hey, talk to your DM and they'll help you, guide you, whatever. But I'm always worried that the DM is just going to go along with it. We're like, yeah, cool, we'll make it work. And in the background, we're like, you arse, I can't believe you're making my work so much harder for me. I don't like it. So I start by not starting. I just wait until the nth hour, and then someone is like, so we're ready to go. Has everyone got the characters? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll not make it up on the spot, I promise.
I sent you that file. Did you not get it? Was it a blank document? That's weird.
On that note, Joe, I'm going to need your backstory in the next day, mate.
Okay, well, so I'm going to ask Jason to go next because you mentioned sometimes you want to put the idea of a relationship with a fellow character in there, and you don't want to step on anybody's toes. But I know that Jason has gone into campaigns, and actually Lee has too, because we've both done it, but with an already established relationship. So Jason first and then Lee, how do you, if you have an idea and you want to be involved with another player from the get, how do you approach that?
Well, I ask the player, and it's usually a player that I am comfortable with, such as yourself. Or I'll see what the story is. Usually, maybe the games I have joined in, I've listened into a few sessions as well, so I kind of get a feel of some of the characters. Or specifically for Lee's Thursday campaign, I kind of wanted some kind of connection in there straight off the bat. So I think I spoke to Kai, kind of came from similar financial backgrounds. So we thought, well, we're both kind of nobles. So we came up with just kind of how we know each other in passing because our families know each other, and then developed the relationship from that point. And at the beginning, it was very much just improv, and we kind of went along with each other because we never had anything fully written down. But to be part of it, it's like, oh, do you remember that time when we did this prank, and just make it up as we go along. And Kai is just a trooper and just went along with it and has improved enough.
Yeah.
And has that experience that he can go along with it and make it seem like it comes natural to us. So
yeah,
because that's how I kind of get into doing the role play with other people, and that's how I do the character backgroundy stuff. But the backgrounds are kind of quite loose, partly for the other players that I like to make those connections with, but also for the DM to manipulate or move stuff around enough to fit their setting. I don't want to be like, this happened at this point and it's a fixed canon in my backstory. I go, I want something like this. Use what you have in your established world to fill in this gap and make it make sense, and we'll meet in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
I think, if you're gonna get a relationship, start a relationship with another player, it's definitely a good idea just to like talk it out with them first, see how they feel, and yeah, I think it works well if they're not so much big on role play. It can work well with them to sort of bring them out of their shell. They know they've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
somebody like a common thread that they can fall back on stories and stuff, and yeah, I think that really works well. Um, Definitely adds a stressing element to the game though, having a relationship already established if things happen and stuff, and changes how your character acts completely.
Yeah, the weight of the consequences to every action is so much heavier because you have such a bigger personal involvement and investment in the game because you have a connection that was there that predates, the start of the campaign. Absolutely. So we kind of deviated just a little bit, going back to both Jason and Lee. How do you approach your backstory in general, whether or not you have another character involved in that story or not? How do you start?
So if I'm creating a character that is not specifically tied to another person's or a canon character in the game, I'll usually think of a scenario that I'd like to play out. So for the Friday game, my character is on a search to avenge the curse that was put on him and his wife, who is this
Mm,
now a little spider that he holds in a necklace, who was cursed by
right, right,
either
right.
whatever the protagonist is, the big bad guy of the campaign is going to be,
Hmm.
or someone along that path towards that goal. And I just like that scenario. I want to play that out, and it's the relationship again, even if it's a character that I've made up to make this relationship. I like to
Hmm.
play off of what is my actual goal for the character, what are they trying to achieve that fits into this scenario, and a lot of it sometimes just inspiration of watching people on TikTok that have
Mm,
character ideas, or just general TV shows, movies, a lot of Disney, Pixar kind of stuff ties
yeah,
into
that's a
there,
good
like the
shout.
origin stories. So I just take influence from what's around me to do a generic background because everything else after that point is going to be unique to that character anyway.
Hmm.
So take what I can and use inspiration where I find it, and then continue that story after that inspiration stops.
Nice.
Yeah, I pretty much like to single out an event that had happened in my character's backstory and work from that. So
Hmm.
it doesn't even have to be anything drastic like their parents are dead or whatever. It could have been they just seen heroes walking along in a parade and gone, you know what, I really want to be that when I grow up, and that's how they decided to set themselves up. So trained for years and went that way. And I think once you start asking questions like that, the backstory sort of just writes itself. Like, well, so they did this event. Well, how did they come about that? How did they get the skills good enough to be able to go on an adventuring party? How did they even end up in the party they're at? Or so things like that. I like to pull from. Um, Movies are a big one, or TV series, like Jason was saying. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff there that you can pull from for inspiration and ideas. Um, and 9 times out of 10, if you come with an idea to your DM, if they're not that much of a dick, they'll run with it, and yeah, they'll make it work however they can. I know a lot of people think like, oh, it's extra work, and you don't want to hassle the DM before you start making your character or start the game or whatever. Um, but that's what we're here for. That's what DMs do. They really enjoy the work, so never be afraid to go to your DM if you've got ideas and want to implement something.
I will say that although I sort of said, oh, I start by not starting. I have the last two big characters I've made for campaigns. Both of them I started with uh, the sort of who are they backstory first. Like, what is their day to day life? What does their day to day life look like? So I had Scratch, who was a con artist essentially, and for the latest, I've got Hurrah, who uh, essentially was a wandering. He was a nomad that's trying to restore the natural order of things and try and keep things tickety boo, and that in hindsight, for both of those characters, made it a lot harder then to sort of, as you've both alluded to, work out why they're there and how to fit them into the story and what, like, why on earth are they? I mean, both of them sort of I lucked out because Scratch has been in 2 campaigns, Hurrah's been in 1, and both of them in all 3 campaigns sort of just appeared, like, through no fault or control of their own. They literally poofed into existence. But those 3 games, by the way, run by 3 different DMs, all with the same sort of entry for me for one reason or another. But for this latest campaign that you're running, Jason, I started with the why are they there first, and then I've started thinking about the kind of who are they and who were they, what was their day-to-day life before they appeared here. And I will say that's made a huge difference. Like, I had this thing in my head where, oh, well, I've got to know who they are before I can think why they might be there. And that was a massive mistake. Actually, it's been easier this time thinking, why are they there? Which is reiterating what you just said, Lee. Like, fit them into the placement for them first, and then work out the like life story afterwards. Seems to work a lot better. Seems to be a lot easier.
That's interesting to me.
Does the level of the character affect where you start at that point then? Because if you're starting at level 1 or 2, you kind of, what is the goal? But if you're starting at like a higher level, say 8 to 10,
Yeah.
you already got like sort
An
of
established adventure.
character in the
Mm-hmm.
in the story. Does that affect your guys' process? I know some of you may not have started at such a high level, but would that, if you were to start at a level 8 or level 10 character today, what would be your process from this point on?
I don't think I've started a campaign that's been like that high level from the go, but I think if I was to do something like that, it would be, well, how did they build up to this? So I think my backstory would be a lot more lengthier than it normally is if I was high level, because you'd have to put in all the details of what they had been doing previously. Like, you can't just go, well, they came off a farm and that's it, because, well, what have they been doing to gain all this experience and knowledge that they have to be able to continue, and how they got this reputation already if they've literally just been laboring on a farm.
The idea of lengthier than I already have is terrifying to me.
And me.
I think that it would have to, but in terms of my backstory, I don't think that it would affect length for me, because I would choose a starting point and move from there, or I would just do highlights. So I think in a lot of my backstories, I also include information about my parents. I'm trying to think. I think almost every single one starts off with how my parents met, or there's some sort of element of my parents or my grandparents or something that gives me time before my character even existed. And then you take whatever my lifespan up until that point is. And so I just am giving you piece here, move forward, piece here, move forward, piece here, instead of going, well, on October 31st, 1874, so-and-so was born, and then her first word was blah, 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 blah. I'm not going through chronologically in that way. But I do think that, yeah, there would have to be an element of taking into consideration how I got the things that I have now. And I think what I would do is, we have a DM who, upon level up, makes us do a montage of how we got the things that we gained from the level up. So we have to come up with a reason. Oh, you got, Atuza, my Unia, I don't know how to say that word. She's half orc and half elf, but she just was given a new right. She's a blood hunter, and she got right of the frozen. And so her best friend, who is what generated this journey for her, was this Viking type woman, and she came to her in a dream, and everything frosted over, and now she has this new power. I think it would be elements of that for me if I started at a higher level.
Yeah, I think I can speak almost directly to this, because in a very short time span, I started a Curse of Strahd campaign where we were level 1, and at a similar kind of time was thrust into another campaign at level 8, I think it was. And then I've now joined another campaign again around that same level. The level 1, I think that was scratch, and that was easy because I just, like I say, it was just, what has he been doing to his life up until now? And like you, Lee, I didn't want to make it so that he was some kind of hero already, because that wouldn't have made very much sense. But at the same time, he needed to have enough sort of unique personality for him to be interesting enough to be involved in a story. For the others, one of them, some wonderful DM invited me into a one-shot first with this character, and then he was saved from a prison. So we got the opportunity to kind of bulk out his story by coming up with something just adequate for a one-shot that made sense in the world, and then building on it from there. And sort of as both Kristin and Lee have said, I at least started off with just something very simple and just snippets of the past, rather than worrying about what has he been doing for the last sort of, for want of a better word, for the last 8 levels of his life. Because that's a lot to think about, and it also, I think, pigeonholes you if you are too strict. If you join at level 8 and you're too strict about what you've been doing for the last however many years to get to that point, it forces you into a direction that after a couple of weeks playing with a character and you get to know them yourself, you might start to regret. So I quite like keeping it, even if you join at level 8, keeping it sort of open-ended enough that you can, because I don't know these characters until I start playing them. I can write and write for weeks, but until I actually start being them, I've got no idea who they are.
I think I would agree with that. And I think that if you leave those huge gaps, it allows for the story that you're telling and creating as you go to fill in some of those gaps. All of a sudden, you're approached at this specific situation and you have to find motivation for the action that you're going to take. And then you realize that your grandma died and she gave you this pendant that smelled like peppermint. And now all of a sudden you smell peppermint and you're reminded of your grandma. And all of a sudden, that's whatever motivation. So I think that having those gaps allows for almost more personality creation during the campaign as you go along. That was a really good question, Jason.
Yeah, that popped into my head. I was curious. So,
yeah,
right moment to ask it while we're at this point of the conversation.
Yeah. All right. So let's go simpler. I say simple. Nothing's simple for me ever. How do you name your character?
It's hard. I usually don't. The name's usually the last thing I think of, and it's usually on the day. Like I'll have the background ready, I'll have the character art ready, and the voice and everything, and the name is literally the last thing that comes into my mind. I just go, after knowing all this information, it sounds like this person would be called blank.
Yeah, it's rough. I struggle with it. I really do. I think it's like the hardest thing to do, because there's so many people who have characters that the chances are you'll definitely pick the same name as somebody else. And every time you make a character, no matter what you do, you always want to be like an original sort of thing. Even if it's like 5th, 6th, or 7th character, and you go, I want to be original. I want to do this my way, and have a unique name, but it never will be, because there's that many people that play. Somebody's got that name already.
Sure.
So I'll just look around and see some words are on there, and I'll just jumble around. And, oh, that's a name.
Like how Voldemort came up with his name?
Yeah, pretty much. It worked for him. Why can't it work for me?
Okay. All right. Well, we're setting a standard there.
Very on brand. Though for that reason, that's why I almost always, as one exception, but I almost always come up with a last name, because in the real world, I know quite a few Joes. I know a couple of Lees. You're right. You're probably going to come up with a name that already exists, but that sort of matches reality anyway. But if you've got a different last name, well, there you go. You're a different person. Like, even if I never ever use it, Khan in the last campaign had a last name. I don't think it ever came up. That's cool. That's fine. But just in case we ever came across another car.
But
Just
saying
in
that,
case.
second names were really helpful when Lee made Oric, because I based an entire family and lore around the Sparkstone family. That really helped me as a DM. So having those last names can be handy in ways that you don't really think about before. Because now I had this entire family and this name, which is it's quite a powerful name as well. That I can make this prestigious family with all these other different characters in, and now he's got cousins that do different things and all kind of stuff, which further
And a
down the line,
sister
and a sister, yeah.
Annoying
who's
sister.
not crazy.
I mean,
She's genius.
the way that your timeline works in your campaign anyway, that's really cool because you can branch out like entire family trees pretty easily if you've got an actual lineage to follow.
Yeah, having that second name, it can just be great for those kind of lineages. It's really cool because then when the same characters come back, you're seeing the generations of their previous characters still in the world they're playing in.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool, in my opinion.
I will just, in case anybody else, I didn't actually expect you, Lee, to say that it was so much of a struggle for you. It's a struggle for me. It's a struggle for me in real life as the mom of 4 children. 3 of them didn't have names until after they were born. So this is not a unique to D&D kind of situation for me because I do, I think personally for me, names have a big importance. And so, for example, Daisha. Daisha's name was specifically chosen because of what it meant. And she was a reborn Yuan-Ti, and her name basically meant like life or the one who lived or something like that. And I thought, oh, that's a really great way to subtly that nobody else, I don't think knew. Nobody else took the time to look it up, and why would you? But for me, it helped me kind of imbue her with everything her backstory around her was. It helped me kind of infuse it a little more. So I'll do that with last names too. If somebody was born on a full moon, I might put into the Google machine names that correlate with a full moon and go from there and start something. So just in case anybody is struggling, baby name generators are around on the internet, and it might not give you a cool Yuan-Ti name, although they do have fantasy name generators too.
Yep.
And sometimes if, I'm really lacking or not really finding what I want, I'll just click, 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 click until I find something that sparks an idea.
1,000 clicks later, you're still there.
Yes, and then I go, oh, why didn't I write that one that I
Yep.
saw like 14 clicks ago down? Because maybe I could use that.
I approach naming cities that way though, and you've seen that process, and you've done it.
Yep.
You've done it with me when we created the UNT's kind of domain in our campaign. A lot of the cities were highlights like what their background is or what's most prevalent in the city, which I think we do in the real world as well.
Yeah.
Especially with surnames and locations that are often named after what is abundant in the area. The area I'm in now is called Long Forest. Kind of the descriptions in the name.
Yeah.
So often how places are named in real life as well, right?
Yeah.
It makes sense. And that helps with the immersion as well.
Yeah, especially if you're like, oh, what does this surrounding city look like? It's given to you right there. It's for anybody who, like me, kind of sometimes lacks visual imagination. You've got it laid out for you. Okay, so speaking of visual, then character art, which can be taboo. So, but what does your character art generally look like? Where in the process does it come for you? Do you have a picture first and then go from there? Do you create your story and then find a picture to match up? Do you have a picture in your head and you try and find, for those of us who are not artists and cannot draw our own things other than stick figures, how does that work for you?
I always, because I quite often start off with who this person was, what they did in their day-to-day life, or if they're higher level, what have they been doing for the last few years. Clothes are almost always the first thing that I deal with, and
Clothes?
clothes.
Oh.
Yeah, what they are wearing is my starting point, and then I build a character, a person around that. Because if they were a blacksmith, well, of course they're going to be wearing deep dark leathers, probably stained in burns and burrs, and they're going to be carrying some kind of metalwork tools, and that then informs me of, oh, actually, yeah, they're probably pretty strong. So they might have pretty broad shoulders because they've been carrying these heavy tools and wearing this heavy material all the time. And they might have sooted face as well. So whatever kind of facial features and skin color they've got, they're also going to have kind of dusting. And like it builds from that for me every time without fail.
That's
That
interesting.
might be the first time I've ever heard somebody start with clothes. I love that.
Yeah. Me, it depends. Because I like to look for different character art all the time anyway. I can
Yeah.
start with a picture and then form my character from that. Like I'll see a picture and I'll be like, that is really cool. I want to make a character around this person.
Mhm.
But if I've already done the character and got no picture yet, usually head to one of the AI generators, which I know a lot of people don't like, but I am terrible at drawing. And I feel like that just helps me get whatever's in my head onto like the screen or as best as it can without costing me too much money.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, character design for me is strange. When I was first starting out, it would be well, we did it mostly imaginary. So my character
Mhm.
for me was a basic description at the start of the campaign or the one shot, and then has only lived in my head from that point. And then each person took what I said and made their version in their head. And then I found Hero Forge, and I don't have any character concept until I jump into Hero Forge now to make those characters. Mostly because it's it's really hard for me to really know what I want until I've got like the class, the background, and the skills down, because I like the correlation between how they look like and the skills that they've got. So if you got high strength, you're gonna have the bigger muscles. If you're more dexterous, you're gonna be skinnier. If you're an artist, there might be certain traits that have for them, maybe a different color eye or certain more facial features that just scream out maybe the beard or facial hair shaped in a certain way to indicate that they're a little bit more artistic. But rarely don't think about what they look like until I get into the Hero Forge process for the token, because the what they look like isn't like a priority to me. It's the story that the character has rather than what they look like. They could look like anything at the end of the day, but it's the story that I'm really invested in. So the visuals don't really
So your visual comes way later after your
way later.
character's already fleshed out.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
about Lee? Where in that process does the visual happen for you?
Well, if I haven't got a picture already that I was designing my character from, it'd be
Mhm.
same as Jason. Well after, because
Yeah.
I agree with him. It's not so much something that I'm that bothered about. It is nice to have an image that you can go show other people that's from your head and go, this is
Yeah, yeah.
what they look like. So, but yeah, it's not really that big of a deal for me.
Joe, where does it fall for you?
Probably even later than that. Given that we already joked about the fact that my backstory sometimes comes last minute, the image is the very, very like I'll be handing you a backstory while putting my image together.
Your image is my name.
That's that's fascinating to me because for example, uh all three of you know Miranda. I had the picture of Miranda saved for eons. And I saw that picture and I said, she has a story that I want to tell. I'm going to save it. And I showed it to you like maybe
Yeah.
a year and a half before Miranda ever came to life. And I just put her in a folder and I said, she will have a story one day. And then I was presented with an opportunity and I said, oh, I have the perfect image for this. And it doesn't always happen that way for me, but I do feel like a lot of times when I'm stuck, for example, Jason, this campaign that we're just starting, the visual you saw before is completely different than the visual now. And I was struggling writing the story with the visual that I had previously, and I was like, you know what, maybe I just need to look again. And I looked again and I saw another image and I said, okay, this is her. And oh, by the way, she has a twin. And oh, by the way, and then the story just started pouring out of me that was sparked from that visual. So it's really interesting to me that it doesn't happen until like way, 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 way later. Like almost at, it's not even the period at the end of your sentence. It's like
Yeah,
the
it's
space at the end.
totally an afterthought for me, the visuals, because it's just the priority is what story do I want to tell and get the most enjoyment out. I could be any, I could look like anyone, and it wouldn't bother me what the character looks like. It's the story that I'm telling, because it all happens in my head anyway. I know we have visuals on the screen,
Yep.
but regardless of what the visuals on the screen are that help you create the environment or the character, it's all going on in my head
Yeah.
anyway, so I can make it look like whatever I want to within my own mind. So the representation on the screen doesn't priority.
And I think the closest I've ever got to that, like I have sort of got to that, but the closest I've ever got is seeing either seeing someone else play something or seeing in a film or whatever another race or another class and being like, oh, I'd really like to play that. And that's
Hmm.
as close as it gets. Like, it's not that I see an image of a specific being and want to then back out their story. It's that I might see like an idea of this kind of person, and then yeah, I'll build the backstory and then deal with the image.
Just confirming what we all knew. I'm a
Yeah.
weirdo. It's fine.
I think it's just different processes, and let's see how we get to that end point that matters.
For
I have
sure.
noticed something recently though. I've been leaning more towards the sort of in visuals, more scarring and more brutality in my characters. Especially
Hmm.
Fawn has a totally blind eye. It's just white.
Yep.
My Friday character Saljin, his entire leg is just a spider leg. And I'm going for more of those kind of grotesque images these days. I don't know what it is. I've just been playing these perfect looking characters for a
Yep.
long time. And they're just becoming so like bland and boring to me that I'm trying to reach out and give them features at this point. So
Yep.
definitely I can see in my own representation of the characters how it's evolving from when I first started playing
Yeah.
to now, because I'm just progressing those kind of interests in more of the visual side and a representation for the other players, less for myself.
I will say that as a woman, when trying to find art that is, I mean, this is a fantasy game, right? When trying to find art, it's really hard to find art that is not like this picture perfect,
Yeah,
specimen of whatever it is. She's either super duper strong or she's super duper skinny and
yeah,
she has super duper big boobs and she's gorgeous and this flawless hair. And there was a one shot that Lee and I played in, and I kept looking at pictures and I was like, I don't want her to be pretty. And actually, oftentimes, Miranda is an exception, but oftentimes, I don't want my characters to be pretty.
romanticized
I want
in
them
that
to,
kind of.
right. I want them, I don't want them to have something that will attract people based off of what they look, because I'm interested in telling the story. And maybe that is a scar or I don't know, but I just it's do you as men find it as challenging as I do as a woman when you're looking at art
Absolutely not.
to
I can't. I
no.
can't. I can understand your point of view, but I definitely can't
Yeah.
relate to that because
Mm.
even in games like we play online, all the female characters have this bog standard design made for them,
Yep.
and they kind of follow that, even though there's details that
And
change to
bikini armor?
separate them.
Yeah.
Yeah, which like I don't mind because there's barbarians who are all just ripped to muscles that wear just
Yeah.
underwear. Do you know what I mean? So
Uh-huh.
but it's for the males, you can be kind of any shape and any size with all these different mutations and scars, and they kind of get away from it. But for female art specifically, it is so romanticized that I can see where you're coming from. It's really hard to breach out of that when you're looking for art
Yeah.
online. There's a few artists that do those kind of alternate body types and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's hard to come back for sure.
This
You
in
look
itself is one of the
pensive.
reasons. Yeah, this in itself is one of the reasons I don't do the picture until the end, because I'm not the most wonderful artist in the world. But I honestly, the picture I give is often a picture I have settled on, because while I don't have the problem you're describing,
Mhm.
I can't find the thing that I want. And I feel like I would be perfectly happy if I ran a campaign and everyone gave me their token as just a stickman, and each of us just had a different coloured stickman and described their character, and we didn't need any character art at all, because honestly, as has been alluded to before, so much of it happens in your head anyway. Well, like when you, very often our tokens are headshots, right? You've described Miranda and Atuza to me. I've seen Fred's headshot, but there's so much of those characters that I haven't seen artwork for, but I know exactly what at least I think they look like. So I don't. Yeah, I 100% agree with Jason that I can't. I understand what you're saying, but it's not something I can empathize with easily, because
Mm.
we do not experience it. But it's also something I don't necessarily concern myself with, because pre-built art just doesn't interest me most of the time. For the same reason, like, it's not the image I had in my head, but just for a totally different reason and a much less damaging reason.
I think the visual is important for me because I'm one of those people. We've all discussed it before, even like when trying to pick out colors for my tattoo. I can't close my eyes and picture it. So I think the visual is important for me, and that might even go into why the visual is important to me for storytelling purposes, is because I can't just close my eyes. It's mostly words that happen in there. It's not a
Yeah,
visual, but
yeah. I get that, which
um
is why when I run my games, I try and get the map and the artwork to all kind of really display what's actually there and ready to go.
yeah.
Because I'm terrible at describing the scene. I'd rather be like, here's an image I've created, because I can
Yep.
put it down and create it better than I can describe it. And there's always bits I'll miss out when describing the scenario when you walk in. So having the visual there helped me at least create it in my mind, but also helps people like you, Kristin, who can't picture those kind of scenes.
Mm.
You can then actually refer to the image directly instead.
I still think you're pretty good at giving a verbal description. So
Yeah.
don't sell yourself short there, buddy. I see nods all over the place. Okay, so from going from idea in your brain to image or words on paper, and then bringing that character to life, more than just stats, let's talk about character development and a full-fledged personality. Do you typically, I mean, I know that some of you have already even talked on it, but do you typically come to the table with an idea, or do you create from scratch and let the world and the people around you shape their creation? How do you develop this idea into a full-fledged person?
I think I just like have a rough idea of what their personality is, and then just see how I play them, because that's the best way. Once you're playing that character, you're living them, so then you
Mhm.
can sort of like get into that headspace of, well, they've been presented with this situation. I've only dealt with it on paper, but then now they're here and I have to interact with other people. So how would he do it, or how would they do it? And that's just how I build off it, and their personality sort of shaped that way. But I have like a basic idea of what I want them to do, personality wise.
Yeah, I guess sort of the same, and I like the idea of exactly as Lee said, kind of dealing with it. Yeah, I've written something on paper, but now I'm playing them, and now I'm getting to know who I really am. But also, that then gives me, after the session pause, to think, why on earth did I react that way?
Mm.
Like, if I go to Odo, I already had in on paper that he was essentially had left his village to go to war and be the hero, but actually ended up as essentially the stable boy.
Mhm.
And that had a vague concept in mind, but then he behaved a very specific way around women, and it wasn't until he met some and had interactions, and a couple of them were a bit more forward than he was used to, and then it got me thinking, why was he? Oh, well, obviously, if he's a stable boy, he hasn't interacted with very many women. He left home
Mhm.
early. Here's all the pieces that built this character that I hadn't really conceived of or thought of before. So I like Lisa's, I like reacting to it in place, and then afterwards I'll think, why on earth did he react that way or she react that way, and develop the character that way.
Yeah, that's it. Interesting, Jed. I think I'm slightly different the way I approach my characters. I try and understand their beliefs and motivations, and then use those loose beliefs and motivations in order to act upon them. If you believe a certain race of species is terrible, he's going to act a particular way towards that kind of place. Or the background, in Zachariah's case, came from nobility and has no kind of experience with the poorer classes, so he sees them different than he sees his peers who are in his kind of social class. So he
Ew,
treats
poor
them different,
people.
and exactly,
Literally.
which is horrible. But a lot of my characters seem to lean towards being mean to a certain kind of person. I don't know why that is, because I feel like that's quite opposite the way I am in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's the fancy world of exploring them, and maybe reinforcing them via the characters of how not to treat people. For example, I can play it out and get the reactions, and then see what other people's reactions are like towards that character. But yeah, there'd be certain frameworks in mind with those motivations and beliefs that will inform the decisions that my character makes. Which is easy when you're playing the one character, and when you're running a game, and I'm sure you can all empathize,
Yeah.
switching them up for NPCs can be real difficult.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I definitely have like a base framework. Like I say, like again for Odo, stable boy, and there's like he left home early, and there's ideas that form the overarching personality. But then it's those specific interactions. I find if I'm too specific, if I'm too like bogged down in this is exactly who that is before I've actually played them, I sometimes find it then really hard to follow through in it. And I find myself during improv trying to react and be agile during a game, and find myself accidentally doing something that, because of how rigid I've been, would be completely out of character for them, and I just have to
Mm-hmm.
go with it and ride it. Whereas if I'm more fluid and like I develop as I go, sometimes I find out
Like
more
traits
about the
about
character
yourself.
that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also definitely find like you're as you say, like you build a character that's like they don't really like poor people, and you've been doing all these disfigured things, and maybe it says something, speaks something to ourselves as well when we just kind of go with the flow, and we learn
Yeah.
a little bit about ourselves as
I
we
go
do it.
with the is it Ian McKellen approach? Is on acting? Just be that character. Just be them.
Mm-hmm.
Just just don't think about it. You are that character now. Just be them and
Mm-hmm.
act as that character. Sometimes it can get carried away in
Uh-huh.
certain times, depending on the scenario and the people that you're with, and you can end up having like irrelevant conversations just in game as that character because it's just fun and you get carried away with it. But yeah, I think it's important to know what will also convince the character to change as well, and how your character will progress and change as a person through the campaign. Is there anything another player could do, or a scenario that the DM can put in front of you that would vastly change the motivations and beliefs of your character?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I always come to the table with a couple of decisions already made about their personality. Whether so my Furbolg, which we've discussed before, I was doing research on Furbolgs, and that's a whole separate issue because Furbolgs now are not what Furbolgs were in previous editions. But I delved into the lore of previous editions, and I let a couple of those things inform me. So, for example, my character couldn't lie. And I don't know that people picked up on it. And when she did, when she attempted to, or when she thought about it, she would start shaking and breaking out in sweats because she just physically couldn't bring herself to lie. And she was also a cleric. The bestest of classes. Don't you ugh me. But what I also did was I researched. I picked who her deity was going to be, and then I researched them and went down into rabbit holes there and figured out. Well, I mean, what drew me there, and what about her personality would have changed or developed because of this. And then that always gives me a jumping off point. Kind of in terms of getting into their shoes. But I think, I mean, and I've talked about it before, how your character develops you as a person, or how maybe you find out things that you had been suppressing or didn't really realize were there all along, as you go through in role play. I think that's a fascinating topic for another time. But is there anything that when you're, all right, we're getting ready to play session on Monday and it's coming up to time, what do I have to do to get myself into their shoes? I know that for a long time, Lee would tell me that he would listen to specific music to kind of get into that character's head. What do you guys do? Is there anything you do, or do you just come to the table and go, me, 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 me? All right, I'm whoever
Um,
now.
I'll often think of their backstory, especially if there's a defining factor within their history that motivates them. So for Saljin on my Friday game, the case of his wife being a spider and how
Hmm.
traumatic that would be if that happened in real life, and my other half was turned into a literal bug by somebody, how would that actually affect me? And then using
Hmm.
the experience of this character, how would it affect them? Would it be similar to me, or because of their history and who they are, would they go about it a different way? So really, that hour or half an hour before the game starts, really try and think on those key moments in the character's life, and hopefully with that immediately in mind, can influence how I play them for that session.
Hmm.
I think I'm same old, same old. I listen to music that I've picked out already for that character, to sort of step into their shoes and replay over the events of the last session in my head, and yeah, just sort of like talk through to myself how why they made this decision or why they didn't make this decision or why they just stood back and watched or something like that. And I think that helps me ease into the character, and then yeah, it's just you're waiting for that first bit of role play, and then I think once you get into that first bit of role play, you just slide back into your character, and it's fine.
Mm.
It's such a cool idea. I love that idea. I might start using that. The music idea. Brilliant. I feel like Kristin, you're gonna love this. What I do. My kids hate it. So most of the games that we play are sort of mm, not in the middle of my kids' bedtime, but basically I'm rushing to get them ready and put into bed so that I can come join a session. So I very
Hmm.
often, from the end of dinner time until the kids are in bed, I will speak as my character. So I can spend an hour speaking in a French accent so that they go to bed with a French story because that is the character I'm playing next. My kids sometimes love it, sometimes hate it. Tough luck, they have to deal with it because that is pretty much the only way I can get my head right in time for the game
Hmm.
start.
My kids have a similar issue here. Um, I also find that when I'm driving, I will talk to myself, and I will talk to myself in different voices just to
Yeah, I
try them
feel that.
on. But if I'm like, all right, I've got to drop this one off at school, and then I'm coming home because it's a different time of day for me, because of the time difference when we are playing. It's the afternoon, and so I'm generally coming from something else, and so I'm wandering around my house or I'm driving home, and I'm doing the same thing, pretending like I am someone else. I actually did, because it popped up in my brain and then it floated away, but I did want to mention that I have created, and I know that they're out there all over the place, but when you're trying to develop and get into a character and find out things about them, I have this list of questions, and they're just regular questions. Do you prefer morning or evening or the middle of the night? Do you drink coffee or tea or something else? Do you like spiders? If you saw a spider, what would you do about it? And these seemingly innocuous questions kind of really help me pull together who this person is to prepare me to better play them. So that's just a footnote from before. Um, but let's wrap this up, as a final question, has there ever been a time that you created a character and it turned out that you really didn't like them? And if so, how did you deal with that? No
Didn't
regrets.
didn't like them in what way? As in hated playing the character or hated their personality?
Yeah, like you just really, for whatever reason, you were not you were maybe even super excited about this character. And then once you've played them and you said, okay, well, I'm going to try and shake that session off. It'll be better next session. And then you go to that next session and you're still not feeling it. Like when somebody recommends a TV series to you and they say you got to wait until episode 4 before it really kicks in. You just
Yeah.
keep waiting for episode 4 to happen and episode 4 just does not do it for you. What do you do then?
Yep. My character was John. Absolutely loved his personality and everything, but
Aw.
I hated playing the barbarian. It's just I feel like they're just so lackluster.
Mhm.
That's just my personal opinion. I'm not one for
Yep.
just swinging a weapon and that's it. I like versatility.
But what
Um,
about his mustache?
I know
He
that's
was
the only
so much more than
that was the only saving grace for him. But I just didn't enjoy playing a barbarian. So as much as I loved his personality and everything, I could not get into the swing of him. Um,
no reprise for
thank
him.
Thankfully it was a short sort of campaign, and he didn't. Well, he made it to the end, but yeah, I don't think I'd ever
Don't
be
brag
playing.
about it.
Well, it's your own fault. Get good.
It's
Yeah,
wow.
I don't think I'd ever play one again. But I think if I found myself in that situation where I was in a campaign playing him long term, up to like level 20, I'd probably speak with my DM and just say, I'm really not enjoying this character. Can I either step away
Mhm.
from the game or change character? And
Yeah.
most DMs will just sort something out that you can change your character because nobody wants you to not have fun playing the game.
As a DM, I'd love those kind of opportunities where a player wants to change their character because it gives you a great moment to absolutely just destroy them in front of the party and
Wow,
break
you
those
are
bonds. Just like, all right, well, you're gonna die, and there'll be whatever you roll on your death saving throw. Tell me it's like a 1, and just like we're gonna get this character dead, and it's gonna really impact the party's dynamic. And then you get what you want, and as a DM, it creates interest and story from my side as well. So those kind of situations when they rise, I don't think it's ever going to be a real issue from the DM's point of view.
Yeah,
If they're anything like me.
we love
For
trauma.
anybody listening, we did an episode of a new series called Interview with the DM, and I interviewed Jason. And when I opened up, I said I wanted to delve into his evil genius brain. And if you were wondering what I was referring to, I'm pretty sure what he just said was a good summary of exactly what I was talking about. Moving on to Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. No. To be honest, there's two characters that come to mind. One I uh, did not enjoy playing only because the voice was really difficult to sustain. Thankfully, I only played him in one shots. If it was a campaign, it would have been easy enough to do something about that. I mean, he could have been slashed on the throat, changed his voice, or something. But he was just really
Ugh.
challenging. Like I loved the idea of it. And the first night that I did it, must have had something in my throat that meant I could do this gravelly voice for an hour, no problem. And then the second session
Mhm.
I did it, it was just I couldn't do it, and it made it not very fun to. It made it less fun to not be able to play the character I wanted to play.
Yeah.
The only other character that comes to mind is Tatsel, who I loved the idea of this like really basically super emo warlock, like just pure disdain for everything around him. I love the idea, but really, really struggled to actually play it when it came to it on the first session. But actually, the more I've played him, the easier that's become. The more I play with you guys, the easier it is to
To
have
be emo.
disdain for the world around me.
Oh,
So,
great.
Wow.
Don't know what that
Good
says
play.
about us.
It must be hard to play a depressing character when you enjoy playing them or really want to play them. So I can understand why that could be difficult at first, but the more you play that kind of character, the more you get into that mindset, which is probably unhealthy thinking about it. But it is what it is. Well,
Take me a couple seconds to recover from that, Joe. God,
you know I love you, really.
I know, but it's that sass. It catches me off guard. It shouldn't catch me off guard. Yeah, I think that I think that the takeaway from that is, if you're not enjoying something, you're at the table to enjoy it. And if you're not, and you can't think of a way to, God, grotesquely enough, slash yourself in the throat so you change your voice, if you can't come up with some sort of altering event that could change your character in a way that you thought that you would enjoy playing, talk to your DM, because I don't think any DM is going to want you to sit there coming to the table and just begrudgingly going through the steps. It doesn't make it fun for anybody else either. And your DM
Might
wants
want to kill you off.
to have fun. And might want to murder somebody, whatever, but it might bring enjoyment to them too. So just have the conversation and see where you can go from there.
Perfect
Is the
example
best.
is Willie.
Yeah.
When
Mhm.
he was a monk who is now a warlock, because of a situation that arose that give us that opportunity to change him around a bit, which would fit the story a little bit more and make it interesting as well. So those kind of problems to make the game more interesting for the player can definitely change the dynamic of the whole game and make it more interesting as well. So
Yeah,
never shy away from making those changes for your players, characters.
agreed. Well, thank you all so much for continuing this conversation with me today. And thank you to everyone, all of you lovely humans listening in. We cannot wait to come back and discuss other topics. But for now, we're going to wish you all a beautiful day. Thinking of characters that you might enjoy playing. Don't be afraid to practice them driving in your car, walking around your kitchen, I don't know, in the grocery store doing your shopping, when you're talking to somebody else in the aisle. Just pretend like you're somebody else. You never know
Yeah,
when you're going to
just
find character
yeah.
inspiration.
If you're good at masking, this is perfect opportunity for you.
Absolutely. So, in closing, we adore you all, and we want you to remember that if you can't be cool, you need to be wicked. Until next time, bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Wherever you found us today, don't forget to like and subscribe for more great content, and if you want to find out more about what we do, how to support us, pick up some merch and find links to our friends like JB Media, visit us at wickedcoolkids.co.uk.